Hi, I'm the author known as Selective, and I'm going to share with you a true story of mine that is from one of my personal experiences. So, I guess I'll go ahead and begin. Um, Now, I am going to leave out specific years and specific locations just for my protection and also to protect my research. So, here we go. It was around the month of August, and I had began researching out-of-body experiences and was attempting my first out-of-body experience. Now, this was a long time before the internet ever existed. So, I was actually, I was actually, well, I'd gotten a lot of books on the subject, and I did everything all the books suggested. And they all said it would only take about 30 days, and of course, it did not. I was way past the 30-day mark and still did not have my first out-of-body experience. So I kept trying. And about 2 weeks, or 1 or 2 weeks into the first month of September, I recall having this one dream that was not actually a dream at all. But I didn't know what it was at the time. And all I could think of is that it was not an out of body experience because it wasn't what I was expecting. And of course, not having one before, I also wasn't able to really identify it as such at the time. But there are actually many different types of out of body experiences because there's many different ways to leave the body, and they are all completely different experiences. So, anyways, so what did I see? Well, it seemed like a dream at first, but I could tell right away I was looking through someone else's eyes and I had no control over what I was seeing. So that right there just was really out of place. It was an experience I've never had in a dream state before. And there, like I said, I couldn't really say anything else. I mean, I was in a dream state, but it wasn't a dream. I had no control over it. I was seeing through someone else's eyes. And because of that, there was also no audio. I couldn't hear anything. I could only see. I could only watch. I was only an observer. So, I just watched. And I kind of thought to myself that this is very important. I have to remember everything I'm looking at, and I have to be able to recall everything I'm looking at. So instantly I saw the person look down at their feet to see what footwear they were wearing, and I remembered that. And I do recall it was outside at night. I remembered that. And I saw them looking down the street as they walked down the street and looking to the left and right, and I recalled the buildings they were looking at. And I remember seeing some wooden posts with Christmas lights wrapped around them, so I remembered that. And what really stood out to me as odd and peculiar was that there was no snow, and it wasn't snowing. So it was odd to see Christmas lights wrapped around a wooden post. And I saw them, or saw the person walking, sort of following some people, and I couldn't really make anything out. Um, Everything was dark at night, and being behind the people walking forward, I could only see their backs. Then they approached um, sort of like a boardwalk. It was like a wooden bridge with little wooden steps going up. Then there was the little wooden bridge, and then it went down with a lot of wooden steps going down to a beach where sand was. And I do recall the person I was looking at was lingering around the wooden post with lights wrapped around them. And as they looked forward, one of the people in front of them was sort of waving their hand to sort of like follow along. And I remember as soon as I, stepped up on that boardwalk, went up those steps, and walked to the end of it just before where the steps went down, I remember looking to the bottom left of the sand where there's like a circle of footprints. And what I mean by a circle of footprints, I don't mean like one set of footprints going in a complete circle. I mean it was a full circle with a lot of footprints in the circle. Like a little dance circle or a ritual circle or something. But anyways, there was no one there, obviously. But then standing the person I'm looking through, as they were standing on the top step, looked straight up at the night sky. And I remember they were looking right into the star constellation of Orion. And there was this weird look in the sky, and sort of like, I can't really explain it, but then all of a sudden, that's when the view completely flipped. All of a sudden, I was no longer looking through the person's eyes. Suddenly, I was in the sky where that star constellation Orion was, and I was looking down at them. And I saw 3 people, sort of like 3 shadowy figures. Now, the reason why I say shadowy figures, I'm not saying they weren't real, but it was so dark, and it was at nighttime, and there was no lights, and probably wearing all black, couldn't really make anything else out. But, and then that's when I woke up, and I jumped out of bed. And I recalled it very, very vividly. Now, I recall all my dreams very vividly. Every time I have a dream, I always remember every specific detail, like I'm actually there. So that's something I've been able to develop and get very good at, is I'm always able to remember my dreams. So I guess because I'm always able to remember my dreams so well, I really had no problem remembering all of this. And something else is, well, I have a few other flashes of that moment, like seeing them go up some steps and open some kind of chest, and then also being in some public place and seeing something on a television set. So I have some other quick flashes of that too, and they weren't really tied together, so it was almost like separate realities of that moment. But anyways, I didn't really know what it was, but I just knew I had to remember it, and I did. I remembered it. Now, of course, I did have other out-of-body experiences shortly after that, but this story is pertaining to this experience. So, just one thing at a time for now. So, now, let's skip ahead 3 years. 3 years into the future. And all of a sudden, 3 years into the future, it wasn't the exact same time of the year. Like, the dream thing, seeing through the person's eyes, happened sometime around early September. But the whole event that unfolded was actually somewhere around late November to middle of December. And what happened then was it was actually me, myself, and I was with two other people. And we took a long trip to a beach. And by the time we got there, it just happened to be nighttime. And when we stepped into this place, as we were walking towards the beach, the air was vibrating. And it was a weird vibration, like, it was like stepping into a portal or a vortex. And what I think it was now is that I think it was actually a vortex or some type of place of, you know, like, there are vortexes on the planet where things behave differently and act weird. And I think this was one of those places. So as soon as we stepped into this, the whole air was vibrating. And it was a really weird feeling. It was almost like walking into a hole in space and time. And as soon as I stepped into that place, I instantly connected with myself 3 years prior, where I was seeing through my own eyes. Yes, it was me. I was actually seeing through my own eyes. So, the first thing I thought was, oh shit. I was like, 3 years into the past, I'm in bed looking through my eyes right now. And the first thing I did, yes, I looked down at my feet just to see. And it was kind of a weird moment because every single thing I did was spontaneous, but at the same time, it was exactly what I saw 3 years in the past. So I could not escape the experiences or make them different. Like if I knew I was going to look at a building, I was looking at it. I couldn't just turn my head and not look. So it was like, it was kind of a weird feeling. Like, what it kind of made me, one of the things I noticed was that it's almost as if we do not have control over reality like we think we do. Like, we have choices and decisions, but all those choices and decisions are pre-planned. Like, it's kind of we can control reality, but we can't control reality at the very moment we think we can control reality. So it's like, it's kind of hard to explain, but when you get yourself into that moment and you find that reality is almost fixed and you have to act it out, how that it's kind of a weird feeling. It's kind of like a really weird feeling. But anyways, so I was in that moment and I realized I was looking through my own eyes. But I couldn't talk to myself because myself from the past was only seeing, they couldn't hear. And the weird thing is you can't really change reality like time, like, or maybe you can change someone else's time or reality, but connected to myself and being conscious in two different spaces and times at the same time, or two different points in space and time at the same time. Another thing it showed was that space itself is sort of an illusion. Like, if you consciously travel to wherever you are, in the past or future, you're always going to be able to connect. It doesn't matter. Space and time um, is not a problem when you're trying to connect to your own self in the past or present or future. It just it's kind of weird or hard to explain, but so anyways, by the time I got to the end of the walkway or boardwalk and looked up at the sky, the reason why I looked up at the sky was I remember the Orion constellation, and I knew that as soon as I looked up, that the me in the past was instantly looking down. And I was just like, oh shit, you know? Like, I'm looking up at myself in the sky. Well, I can't exactly see myself, but I know that, myself is looking down from that angle. Now, how did that actually happen? Now, I know how vortexes and wormholes sort of work, and if you create a very powerful energy field, that's a vortex. And if you find a way to split those two energy fields, well, they have to sort of join together. And if they're really, really, really far apart, especially by space and time, then they are going to join together and create a wormhole to connect them. So, when I spent a very long time meditating and concentrating in my bed to try and have an out-of-body experience, I kept building up my energy field. And that's one of the key factors into O.B.Es, is you have to be able to have a strong energy field and focus it and be able to control it. And when in the future, when I stepped into an actual vortex that occupied a large chunk of land by the beach, it had actually connected me with myself and created like a wormhole. That's what I'm going on. It's a theory, but it's a very good theory. Because that place was not a normal place. So therefore, I can't just see through my own eyes in the future or past anytime I want. I think what made it possible was the two vortexes that connected. Now, I do wonder if I were to do the meditation all the time, would I be able to create two vortexes with myself that connect? But that never seems to be the case, and I think one of the reasons for that is because I'm always in the same place. It's not a different place. And it also might have to do with the power. Like, no matter how much I meditate or how strong my energy field gets, it's nothing compared to what I walked into when that whole land area was just one big vortex. I mean, that was like crazy. Like it was a huge chunk of land. We're talking maybe a good 30 acres or larger than 30 acres. So, but yeah, actually, that does kind of prove time travel can happen, or at least consciously. So if time travel is possible consciously, then the next step is to figure out how to actually physically do it on a physical level. And I guess things get a little more complicated from there, but yeah, that's my experience. Oh yeah, actually, the other little glimpses that I got that never actually happened, like being in, like seeing them go up steps and open a chest, and then there was another one of being in some public place and seeing something on a TV. I have a hunch that those did not actually happen yet. That when I go back to that place, then I'll probably see those things unfold. Or perhaps I might have been seeing alternate choices. Perhaps we might have a choice, or maybe they were like parallel choices. I'm not exactly sure. But it is all very interesting. And I always think of it as there's our minds, like a lot of people try to think everything is physical. And a lot of people say, oh, the mind is just a big chunk of matter and everything can be explained and blah, blah, blah. And those people just don't understand that the mind is not completely where everything happens. The mind is just something that operates the body. And so there's a lot of theories around the brain and how the brain works and how we use the brain. But if I'm able to see through my own body 3 years into the future, then that is pretty much that pretty much states very openly that the brain, well, the brain is either way more complex than we can possibly imagine, or it's not completely everything like people think it is. And if people are really stuck on thinking everything is in the brain and that everything is limited to the brain, then they're not thinking large enough. They're not considering everything. Now, if you liked the story of my true personal experience and you would like to know more about what I know and try a lot of stuff for yourself, I would suggest you try getting my book, The Psionics Handbook, Becoming Hyperdimensional. Just look for links to it on this page, and also, if you are interested in sharing your experiences and helping with the research and helping with the anything pretty much, I am going to be looking for people in the future to work with so we can go a lot further and keep pushing the boundaries of science. And remember to subscribe if you would like to hear more of these true experiences, as I have a lot more that I'll be sharing.